Hi crafty friends, Jen Cassell here. I'm an admin over at the Loaded Envelopes Galore and More Facebook group, and I'm hosting this month's challenge. For this month's challenge, we are going to be using some of the embossing folders that we all have lying around in our stash that probably don't use as much as we would like to. These quick and simple cards were made just simply by using an embossed background and then applying a border embellishment that I already had in my stash. So let's get started. These ones I used with the Tim Holtz 3D embossing plates. If you've never used them before, they are done a little differently than a regular embossing folder, just that you're only using one plate instead of two when you put them into your hand crank machine. You can use the same technique with a regular embossing folder as well. Just simply apply Versamark ink to one side of the embossing plate and insert your paper face down onto the inked surface. It is important to remember when putting the paper inside the embossing folder to try to make contact the first time and keep it down. If you move the paper once it hits the ink, it's going to smudge. When I'm using the 3D embossing plates, I do make 3 passes with my machine because it really does add a little more to the raised image that you're about to create. And now for the fun part. While the ink is still wet, grab your embossing powder. I'm using a gold here. Fun tip, I keep my embossing powder in a disposable plastic container rather than keeping it in the original jars that they come in. It's nice to be able to just immediately put it back instead of having to put paper or something else underneath your project to help put the excess embossing powder back into the container. Look at how simple this is. Once we're done applying the embossing powder, simply heat set. Now that the embossing powder is heated and dried, just look at the way the light is catching that gold. With this background, I used the same embossing folder, but instead of applying Versamark ink, I kept it dry and used some distress ink once I was done embossing with my Sizzix. It's really simple to do. Just grab some distress, or you can use a different kind of ink if you like. For this one, I used Vintage Photo, and just use your applicator to catch those raised images, and it's going to darken down in some areas. For this background, I did the same technique, just using a gray ink instead of brown. For this one, I actually used a different kind of paper. This is Tim Holtz Distress paper. It has a white overlay with brown underneath. I ran it through my embossing plate. I didn't have any ink on it. Once it was done, I just grabbed a piece of sandpaper and sanded those raised images to reveal the brown underneath. Let's walk through one more background together. This time I'm going to be using craft cardstock instead of a plain white paper. I inked my embossing folder using Versamark, carefully applied my paper, be careful not to smudge, and I'm doing 3 passes with my Sizzix. Just look at the way that gold catches the light. Now that we have all of these great embossed backgrounds, these are the cards that I created. Simply apply the embossed background to a card base. The embellishments you see here were actually created to be bag toppers, but I think they make a great card anyways. So thanks for joining me in my craft room today. I hope you enjoyed the quick and simple card project that we created. And moreover, I hope it inspires you to get out those embossing folders that have been collecting dust. I can't wait to see what you create. Bye!